The METUS Tech Show.
Welcome to the METUS Tech Show, a show for HVAC professionals by HVAC professionals.
The METUS Tech Show.
Mitsubishi.
You were talking about something with egg noodles a minute ago?
Yeah, so I was having a conversation with a friend of mine last Friday, and we're talking about food as folks of traditional build like ourselves often do. And so what I had heard from him is that he had made what he called kind of like a lazy stroganoff, where he had taken ground beef, egg noodles, which egg noodles are good any way you can get them, even just with butter, but the wide egg noodles. And then he had taken brown gravy from a can and kind of simmered that, and then reduced about half a block of cream cheese into that brown gravy and poured that over the top, mixed thoroughly with the hamburger. I mean, I guess you could put it in anything, vegetables, if you were so inclined. Paul, I know that's not really your forte, but
Why would you?
I understand, but more broccoli for me. But anyway, it really sounded great. I have not had a chance to try it yet, but I will, and I'll give you a full report when I'm done.
No, please do.
So do egg noodles are they low carb because they're made of egg?
I would tell you yes, but then I'd be wrong.
I don't know what goes into an egg noodle, but I'm sure it's mostly egg.
Is there no egg in regular noodles?
There is egg and that's what goes into making noodles. So
That's also fire.
So wait a minute, if you make pasta like spaghetti, there's egg in that?
Oh yeah.
Because it doesn't look yellow. I don't know. What do I know? I buy it in the box. Prince is my pasta maker. All right.
Hold on a second. I'm looking up what is inside of an egg noodle. Egg noodles are a type of noodle made of eggs and flour. Okay, so it's just pasta.
Okay, so no wonder I can't lose weight.
Yeah, see? So I got to be careful with that stuff because I'm on a low carb diet right now. All this food that we talk about in these podcasts have caught up with me. They caught up with most of us. So,
yeah. Well, the next podcast we can talk about vegan food because I went vegan.
No,
because vegan. Listen, it'll rip out what little joy you have left in your life is gone if you go vegan.
You're not excited about being on this vegan diet.
Yeah,
because you're on this vegan diet because your wife made you go on this vegan diet.
No, I'm off the vegan diet. You know what? Because I gained weight on it. I gained weight, so my wife said, "No, stop the vegan diet," because she wants me to lose weight. But I'm going to tell you, since I got married, I've gained like 160 pounds. It's no joke.
But baby back ribs are not a plant, Paul. Just so you know.
It's plant-based. It's plant-based. Whether it's pork ribs or beef ribs, they're eating plants. Yeah, that's the original process of plant-based food. Anyway, welcome everyone to the METUS Tech Show. You guys, we can't play the theme song to Sesame Street legally, so you guys just go ahead and hum it while I go over this next part. Ready? Okay, let's skip the humming. Okay, today's podcast is brought to you by the numbers 2, 16, 2, 40, 600, 24, 60, 4,000, 1,500, 500, 25, 70, 82, 98, 492, 984, 787, and 365. Guess what we're doing?
Sold.
We are doing M&P by the numbers. We're going to go through all of these numbers and what they mean. And joining us is Sean Gallagher. Sean, say hi. Tell us who you are again for those who forgot you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sean Gallagher, Regional Sales Manager for Mitsubishi Electric for Eastern Massachusetts and Rhode Island. Happy to be here. Thank you.
We're happy to have you. This was your idea, so if this episode tanks, it'll be all on you 100%. We're going to do an M&P version. I'm sorry, a City Multi version after this.
I have broad shoulders.
And by the way, you said good afternoon because it is afternoon when we're recording this, but people may be listening to this in the morning. We're actually recording this on a very special day because in a few hours, the moon is going to go between the Earth and the sun. Apparently, it's never happened before in the history of the world, and people are all excited, but I'm not going to make a big deal about it. So, Bryn, where do we start?
Let's break down what M&P by the numbers even means. What are we actually going to be discussing? These M&P by the numbers, and we'll do City Multi by the numbers as well, but essentially it's just the main numbers that apply to all things M&P. So we started with 365, which would be just our annual maintenance schedule. So 365 days. We want to get that unit looked at, maintained, checked for function, and we'll go through the rest of them.
Not every day for 365 days, but every
No.
365 days.
And this does not mean check your filter every 365 days.
Filters. There's
Okay.
filters.
Well, we're going to talk about that.
That's a great
Filter-
segue into the next one.
You guys remember that guy that used to count, the chef? He had all those cakes. He goes, I have 2 chocolate cakes. And he'd walk down the stairs, and every time he'd fall. No. Just me. Okay.
No,
Apparently, I'm the only one who had a blessed childhood. Everybody else was deprived.
I just remember the count.
All right.
He used to count.
The count.
1, 2.
Okay. So we're on 2. So 2. What is 2?
2 is that you should be checking your filters every 2 weeks. Now, some folks, when they realize that, now this is in the operating manual that comes with the equipment for the homeowner, but some folks, when they realize that, read that, or are told after the fact, say, my goodness, every 2 weeks, seems to be a lot. But when you think about continuous fan operation, which all high wall mount units have, that's why we check them every 2 weeks. If you think about a unitary system that might run 4 or 5 times an hour, we should really be looking at that filter maybe about once a month. But since we run our fans continuously, if you extrapolate from 4 to 5 times an hour, checking once a month to continuous fan operation, that's where the every 2 weeks comes in.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yep.
They may not be dirty. Just give them a look.
Yeah, just give them a look. Rinse them off if in doubt. And I forgot to mention, we did introduce Sean, but Sean is joining us virtually. So is Steve. Steve is in Orlando. Steve Pimentel's joining us virtually. And Bryn
Just landed.
Just landed, right? And Bryn and I are in Boston at the Trading Center. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. All right, what's the next number, Bryn?
16.
16.
So 16 represents feet, and that's the recommended minimum line length on an M series unit. So we don't have an actual minimum line length requirement. We recommend 16 feet or more because anything less than that can create some noise.
Right, because you got the refrigerant in there is good for 25 feet of line. I think we've talked about this before.
Mm-hmm.
The refrigerant's good for 25 feet of line. So if you just put a wall unit in and then you put a hole through the wall and go outside and you got the outdoor unit right there on some brackets, you're talking about a foot of pipe. That's not good. We recommend at least 16 feet. But what's the caveat there?
What is the caveat there?
Do not roll up your line
Do
sets.
not roll up the line sets.
Okay.
Yes.
Just making sure we're on the same page there.
Yes.
Don't wrap the line set around the house 6 times and back to the outdoor unit. That's we're trying to get the 16 feet, and if the customer is adamant about putting the condenser right next to the indoor unit, well, you have to explain to them that they're going to hear some noise, and
They might.
they may need to rethink that setup, that application. Make sure that you get that 16 feet, and do not roll up the line sets. It looks ugly, and it turns into a giant oil trap,
Yeah.
and that's going to
just
affect
not-
the compressor.
And it's not professional. So,
All that being said, a 6-foot line set will work. It's just going to make noise. And I think that, I have that question come up a lot with contractors in classes. Well, should I coil up the line? No. And you say no, because it'll still work under 16 feet. That's just the recommendation to minimize noise, not function.
Yeah, let's use a different word than noise, because noise makes it sound like it's not supposed to. It's a sound, and it's a normal sound.
Yes.
It's the sound of the refrigerant flowing through the system, right? You might hear that if you have a 2-foot line set. You might hear that. Is it going to be a big deal during the day when there's activity? And no, it'll be a big deal at night. So if especially if it's a bedroom unit or a living room, you don't want that.
Right.
No. It's just a recommendation, right?
Yep.
But in all cases, all of these numbers, we should have said this at the beginning, but no matter what number we talk about, this is generally speaking, you need to refer to the manual. As our friend Ralph Wolf says, RTFM, read the fantastic manual.
2 is our next number. So minimum number of connected units for MXZ. Ported, right? Looking at ported and
Or branch box.
Or branch
box,
box.
too. Yeah, because
Smart multi.
if you just have one, then just go with a 1-to-1. So you need at least 2 indoor units on a multi-zone system. That's easy enough. 40, next number.
40. Yeah. So general vertical separation maximum. So we do not want to exceed the vertical separation on any piece of equipment. Always refer to your installation manual for that vertical separation maximum, because what can happen?
So let's talk about, hold on, that's what that means. That means you got a unit on the ground, the outdoor unit is on the ground, and you're going up to a second, third, fourth floor or whatever. You measure from the bottom of that unit on the ground to the bottom of the indoor unit, and that height, that vertical lift, should not exceed 40.
Right.
So what's the bad thing if we do exceed that? What if I just got to go another 5-10 feet higher than that? That's all.
Oil return issues.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yep. In oil return, when you don't have that going back to a compressor, the compressor is not happy.
Yeah.
And let me just add, putting in a P-trap is not going to fix that. So we're not putting any P-traps on our systems. They're engineered to work within that vertical separation, within that maximum line length. Do not add P-traps.
Good point. Good point.
The other thing to keep in mind with that 40 is typically with M series. You may see 49 on like a P series, so you definitely want to make sure you check the install manual for this vertical separation in particular.
RTFM. All right.
Yeah.
The next number is I don't think it's not called a compound number. We'll just go 600/24.
I think they call it
600
an improper
PSI.
fraction.
Say that again, Brad.
I think it's called an improper fraction.
Improper fraction. That would be 624ths. I don't think so.
No.
I think
So-
Sean nailed it on the head. 600/24.
600 psi for 24 hours is
Pressure.
your initial pressure test.
Yeah, initial pressure test. That's what we
And
recommend.
Now is everybody doing 24 hours?
Absolutely.
They should.
Every single installation, every technician is going to charge it for 600 psi, and he's going to wait there, set up a tent, and he's staying there for 24 hours until it's done.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Even that.
Just making sure.
Yeah, it happens.
now the
every day.
reason
Yeah,
for
FS
that is
101.
Go
that
ahead.
600 psi is our operating pressures in heat with a hyperheat can exceed 500 psi. So back when we were doing our 22 stuff and we did, a 200, 300 psi pressure test, that was great because it exceeded the operating pressure of that refrigerant. However, with 410A and now with 454B coming down the line, we need to be doing 600 for a recommended time frame of 24 hours.
Right. And if your nitrogen regulator doesn't go to 600, guess what? You need to get a new nitrogen regulator.
Mm-hmm.
Because the new ones that I've seen, I don't know if they're new, but maybe 3 or 4 years ago, maybe even longer. I'd lose track of time, but they got these like 4 or 5 settings. There's one for trickle, for when you're brazing with nitrogen. There's another one for the initial test. Because if I'm testing it, I'm not going to go to 600 pounds immediately. I'm going to put in 100 pounds and see if it holds, or maybe 50 pounds. I'm going to increase that in small increments. I'll go to 100, then I'll wait and see if the needle's moving on the gauge. Then I'll go to 200, then 300. Because if you go to 600 and just wait and you got a big leak in there, you just wasted all that nitrogen. So go in the steps, increments.
Yeah, regulators have come a long way. Having those presets are great. So it's basically off, braze, purge, which is like 100 psi, and then test, which is the full amount that regulator can put out. And there are different ratings, so make sure you get a regulator that will go up to at least 700 psi. I think they have one that's 750. That'll get you to 600 easily.
Yeah.
Yep.
And by the way, it's dry nitrogen. It has to be dry nitrogen. There is a difference. So
All right. What's the next one?
60.
60 minutes. 60 minutes for your decay test, right?
So,
Your
so what is a decay
So you'll-
test?
So we're basically checking our micron gauge to make sure that we're holding a vacuum. Now, we want to pull down. Are we going to get to those numbers for
Yes.
triple evac? Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the next one, actually. Might as well talk about that one while we're on it. But we want to pull down to 4,000 microns, break with nitrogen, right? So we're introducing nitrogen into the system till we get to 0 psi. And then we're going to continue evacuating down to 1,500 microns. Same thing. Introduce nitrogen until you get it to 0 psi. And then we're going to pull down to 500, maybe even lower than 500 microns. And once we're at that point, we're going to isolate our micron gauge. So the micron gauge is, we're not isolating it. Let me back up a second. We want the micron gauge to see the system side, not the vacuum pump side. That's important, right? So your setup is really important. How you have your valves and everything set up on that system. And We're going to do that for 60 minutes.
All right.
So we're going to do a rise test or decay test for 60 minutes.
All right, so we've got the numbers a little backwards there. We should have gone over 4,000, 1,500, and 500 before the 60. Sean, you're pretty smart. Explain to us why the 4,000, the 1,500, and the 500. What's happening inside the system when we're doing that? And why
We're
the nitrogen?
sweeping that system. So the whole reason for pulling the vacuum is to make any moisture that's in the system go from liquid to vapor, because we can't pull out solid or liquid with a vacuum pump. We need it to be in the form of a vapor, so we need to change state. We pull that vacuum too fast, we can actually freeze that moisture, and now we're not removing it. So we pull down to 4,000 microns, and then we equalize. Very important, don't pressurize with the dry nitrogen. If you pressurize as soon as you hook your vacuum pump back up, you're going to shoot oil back through the ballast in the vacuum pump, and that's bad for it. So we equalize with that dry nitrogen. That's going to sweep the system, allow any ice to turn back into a liquid or a vapor at that point. Dry nitrogen is hygroscopic, meaning it will suck up the moisture. So anything that's in the system there, it will suck up. And then we can start our vacuum pump again and pull all of that back out. Very important that we're not disconnecting hoses or anything at this time. You'll learn to do this almost like a telephone operator, but if you take your hoses off, you've just introduced atmosphere, unless you have low loss hoses or anything like that. So don't do that. Use your Schrader core removal tool, use your hand wheels, and then you're going to make sure that you're pulling down 4,000. Again, like you said, Paul, sweep with dry nitrogen, then pull again to 1,500, sweep with dry nitrogen. Finally, pull the 500 microns, or Paul, to your point, or below. And then we want to conduct that decay test or rise test for 60 minutes. And we want to make sure we hold at least 500 microns for 60 minutes.
Below, right?
Mm-hmm. Or below.
And a couple of things. If it holds at 500 or below for the 60 minutes, right, you can guarantee, we've had this on an episode before, you have guaranteed that there is no moisture in that system. And you've also guaranteed one other thing. There is no leak in that system, period. End of story. You're not going back for a callback for non-condensables in the system. You're not going back for a callback because of a leak in the system, unless something else outside caused a leak. A dog chewing the lines, or struck by lightning, or a rock from the lawnmower, or something. But it won't be because of your workmanship. And one other thing I want to make another just mention. There's really no need to have your manifold connected to the system when you're doing this. You got the vacuum pump, you got a hose going to the vacuum pump into the system, and your micron gauge is in there somewhere. You don't need to hook up your your manifold, not your micro. You don't need to hook up your manifold, because that's just more places for the system to leak. And by the way, they probably are going to leak unless they're vacuum rated hoses. And you won't hold the 500, and you'll be thinking it's the system when it's just your manifold.
Yeah, and core removal tools changed everything. Right. And it's not, removing the core is really important, because now you can pull a vacuum properly, not pulling it through a little Schrader. But not only that, but the core removal tool has a ball valve on it. So now you, like I said earlier, you want to make sure that micron gauge is isolated to the system side, and not seeing the vacuum pump or manifolds or any hoses downstream. So consolidate your stuff. And for the new technicians out there, don't be alarmed if you pull down to 300 microns and it rises to 400. As long as at some point those microns stop rising and it locks in at a certain point. Now, if it keeps going above 500 microns up to 1,000, you got something going on there. Either non-condensables in the system, moisture, or leak, right? So the microns will rise on a rise test, but at some point they will stop solid if your hoses and everything aren't leaking. And
if it goes above 500 and it stops around the 2,000 mark, and it stops there, then that's a clear indication that you have moisture in the system. Right. But if it rises and you let it rise, which I wouldn't recommend, but actually it doesn't matter at this point, but if you let it rise and it goes back to atmospheric pressure, then that's a leak. So, if that happens, then you got to find the leak, pressurize it again. That means you didn't wait long enough to pressurize the system.
Yep. And always be aware that, let's say you're fixing a leak on the system and you're evacuating it. So you're doing a repair. Always be aware that refrigerant's boiling off. There's refrigerant in that oil. and that vacuum could take twice as long. So the triple evacuation will lessen that time than pulling one single evacuation to get that refrigerant to boil off out of that oil. So that's going to cause your microns to rise quite a bit as well when you're doing a rise test. So know what you're working with and know what the scenario is, right? Is it a new system? Is it a repair you're doing? Know what to expect.
Yeah. And those old timers, you can't listen to those old timers. I've been doing this for years. I've never done a triple evac. It's been fine. I've been doing this for years. I've never brazed with nitrogen. Don't listen to them, because those are guys that are my age group, and I had to learn the hard way too. Because when we've talked about this before.
For years we didn't have micron gauges. We used the 30 inches of mercury on the manifold.
Yeah.
And you could pull down to 200 microns, but you're never going to see that pull out of.
What was the old?
You can't.
What was the old saying? You run the vacuum pump was 2 smokes and a Coke. Go have a couple of cigarettes, drink a Coke, and come back, and you're done. That wasn't.
I will say though, just because when I was in a van, didn't have the luxury of having a decent vacuum setup. I didn't have vacuum rated hoses. I didn't have the kits with the Schrader core removals. If you are pulling through your manifold, you still can, but I would make sure that you can isolate your micron gauge and system from your manifold and pump. So whether that's a ball valve on your hoses or whatever, you need to find a way that you can hit your micron gauge on the system side and isolate that from your manifold. Because I failed tons of rise tests before I got my manifold set up, where I could actually isolate my micron gauge and system from my manifold.
And that's what happened to me when I started doing triple evacs, because I didn't always do that. I went to school many decades ago, and they hammered home triple evac, triple evac, triple evac. You go out into the field, you work for somebody. We don't do that, and stop it. Then you learn a little bit, you keep learning. I started doing triple evacs. I started teaching triple evacs, and every single system leaked. And for me, I found out it was my refrigerant hoses.
Mm-hmm.
The red, the blue, and the yellow hoses, those are not vacuum rated. So they were here I am on a wild goose chase trying to find a leak that wasn't there. It was my manifold gauges.
Yep.
So good points.
But what about your O-rings, Paul? Those are good forever, right?
Yes, you never replace O-rings. I get the titanium stainless steel O-rings. No, actually, that's a good point. Those, what do they recommend those? Is it yearly they want you to replace those?
It's a good idea. They're a wear or service item like anything else.
Yeah.
Pull them out with a little pick and replace them, even in your Schrader core removal tool.
Yep, absolutely. Good
And
idea.
change your vacuum pump oil.
Yes.
Change it early, change it often.
Yes. Yeah, and especially if you got a dirty system that you're working on and you've replaced the compressor and it's a burnout. I had this happen years ago. It was actually the FBI office. I can't say where it is because they're listening. But it was actually a pipe broke off. It was a heat pump. And the suction side coming in, the common suction coming in, the reversing valve broke open and it was pointing up. And it had probably been like that all winter. They were running on electric heat for the most part. I go up there, the thing's got no refrigerant in it. It's a first warm day. They're trying to use the air conditioning. You could see algae inside the pipe.
Uh-oh.
Now, the problem back then was this was an old R22 unit. R22 is not available anymore. With 410A, you can't use the same lines. You couldn't even use the same indoor unit. So now we needed to replace the whole system. They needed it to work temporarily. I had a vacuum pump running on there 24 hours a day for about 3 days. And I would just go every few hours. I used to pass this office. I can't tell you why. I used to go to this office a lot, but I would just change out the vacuum pump and then get back to the shop, change oil. And we had guys, me and several other guys, just going out there and changing these vacuum pumps. But even then, we weren't looking for 500. We couldn't. It was just, let's get them low enough that we can just fix the repair and run this system and air conditioning until we can get there and replace the whole system. But that was...
It makes a difference. Change your oil.
Yep, change your oil. Next number is 25. Who wants to take that one?
I'll take that one, guys. So 25 is a pre-charge for M-series equipment, usually the smaller 1-to-1 systems. When we look at our 6, 9, and 12s, again, to Paul's point and Steve's point earlier, always consult the manual for your specific unit. Read that fabulous manual, as Paul mentioned. But it's a general fantastic manual. It's a generally 25 feet is the pre-charge for those high wall mount, smaller units.
So that means that I can run the 25-foot line set from the outdoor to the indoor and not have to add any refrigerant.
So long as that fantastic manual says so,
okay,
you're in good shape.
And what if I only run 20 feet?
No problem.
No problem. I can still leave that in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Beautiful. All right.
Yeah, do not remove charge from the factory charge? I get asked that question sometimes.
Yeah. There's no need to remove any. If you're less than 25, it's still good. Don't remove any. So the next number is 70.
70 feet with a P series 1-to-1, and P series are all 1-to-1s. The factory charge will take care of up to 70 feet of pipe. Same deal. We don't have to remove anything if it's anything less. But yeah, the P series, a little more forgiving with the pipe length, and you can actually get a lot more overall pipe length with P series units as well.
Okay. As it relates to 70, I'm going to give you two more numbers, 36 and 42. What does that mean?
Well, that's where you're going to actually get an increase. So with a 36 and a 42, you'll get 100 feet of pre-charge out of your line set.
Okay.
So we don't have to add any trim charge for 36 and 42s up to 100 feet.
All right. So, Bryn, while you're at it, I'm going to give you the next number, 82.
82 is your maximum single line length for an MXZ ported. So if we've got a ported unit, we've got a single run from that outdoor unit to the indoor unit, we've got 82 feet of a single line to that head.
All right. Maximum 82 feet run. Sean, I like this. I'm just assigning numbers here. I'm going to give you 98.
Number 98, that's your pre-charge for most MXZ port style units. So you have on a port style with all the liquid and suction tappings originating from the outdoor unit, your pre-charge is for 98 feet of liquid line on there.
Okay. We should have done this all along, just assign the numbers in here. Steve, I feel like a game show host. Steve, your next number is 984.
984 feet is for smart multi branch box systems up to 48,000 BTUs. And what's really strange is, when you go to the 60,000 model, which brings us to our next number, 492 feet, because these both go kind of hand in hand. The 60,000 BTU models, your maximum overall equivalent line length is 492 feet. Right, so up to 48,000 BTU smart multi branch box system, overall pipe length 964 feet, and then your 5-ton or 60,000 BTU branch box smart multi, you're maxed out at 492 feet.
And what about the smart multi 3-phase equipment?
So the smart multi caught me off guard there, Paul.
Oh.
It's 787 feet. But again, with all these numbers, mylinkdrive.com, look up the unit, the specific unit you're working on. The install manual will have these right at the beginning of the manual. You'll see the charts right on there.
Yeah. And I just want to mention, for a lot of these numbers that talk about maximum pipe length and vertical separations, you know what's even better than my link drive is Diamond System Builder. Mm-hmm. Build your system in Diamond System Builder. If you exceed a maximum number, it's going to tell you can't do that. So do that before you actually install it. Make sure you don't want to find out after it's installed that you've exceeded one of these numbers. Because if you exceed, so I'm going to open this up, whoever wants to answer it. If you exceed any one of these maximum numbers, what's the downfall to that?
You could have a system failure.
Yeah, you could have a system failure, no oil return. And once you exceed those numbers, there's something that we can't tell you, because we now cannot tell you how much refrigerant to add. Right? Yep. If you exceed those numbers, then nobody knows, right? So when you exceed, like if we give you the 25, that's how much charge the unit comes with, up to 25 feet of line set. You go above that, we can tell you how much to add. But if you exceed a maximum distance, we can't tell you how much refrigerant that system needs. There's one more number that we can't really give anybody, and that's the number to your DSG, your member of the Diamond Service Group. That's your first level of tech support. And that's going to depend on where you are, who you buy your equipment from. So whoever you buy your equipment from, they have somebody who's designated as a DSG, a Diamond Service Group member. Sean, you were in a previous life were one of those DSGs, right? And you often got these calls. So you're going to have to refer to your distributor, whoever you buy equipment from, to get that number. But if that doesn't work, we do have another number, 867-5309. That's Jenny. Okay.
Won't be calling my wife.
Yeah,
all right?
It's my wife, too. So, wait a minute. No, let me just rephrase that. Steve and I don't have the same wife. They just have the same name.
All right. This just got weird.
Okay. Yeah, Bryn's like, what's that number? I don't get it. It's way before his time. Anyway, there is.
To sing it?
Yeah, no. 800-433-4822. That's our Mitsubishi tech support line.
I just wanted to kind of touch on something that we really didn't mention before on any of these. I know we threw out a lot of numbers on maximum pipe length, and we talked about what happens if you exceed it, you get bad oil return and all that. But what about D rates?
Yep.
Don't forget, if you exceed line lengths, I mean, no matter what, we're always derating the indoor unit, meaning I have a 12,000 BTU wall unit. I've run quite a bit of line length, line set to it. What happens to my capacity? Does it go down?
Yeah.
Yes, it does. With any HVAC system, that happens.
I'm going to go one step further. Any refrigeration system, when you add refrigerant lines to it, it derates. You can't do anything about it. Every single refrigeration system in the world derates, and that's an important. We didn't even think about that or talk about that before. So good points.
Yeah. So how much does it derate? You know, how could I find out? Diamond System Builder will tell you that, right?
Yep.
So, you know, in cooling on the hottest day of the year, I got a 12,000 BTU. I've ran 100 feet of line set to this thing, whether it's M series or P series. What have I done to that indoor unit? Well, on the hottest day of the year, in the summer, you're probably only going to get 10,000 BTUs out of it rather than 12. That's what we're talking about when we say derating the indoor unit. Keep track of your line lengths and through the whole thing. Run it through Diamond System Builder if you're unsure, because Diamond System Builder will red flag you if you exceed any of those line sets that we talked about today. And Diamond System Builder is free software on mylinkdrive.com. Click on the software tab, and the download is there for you.
All right. Thank you, Steve. Thanks for joining in virtually and landing in Orlando and then getting on here. Sean, thank you again for joining us. It's always a pleasure to have you on. We'll find another reason to get you on here. And
Thank you very much.
And Bryn, don't you have anything else to do?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Take care. You know, there's one more number we forgot. It's not really, HVAC related, but it's 86. Somebody gives you a vegan diet, 86 that right away.
Yep.
I'm just saying.
I agree.
It was the worst 6 weeks of my life.